Phenomenal. Welcome to another Build Your Legacy investment series. Special guest today, Omar Khan and Dusten Hendrickson, co-hosted by the man, the myth, legend, Andy McMullen, who may or may not be participating today. He's outside of a hospital with his father, so give him a break today. And I'm sure we can hang with Omar and Dusten and talk about development today. Just out of curiosity, before we get started, I want to poll the audience. How many of you guys have ever developed, or welcome everybody, by the way, or have invested into a development, whether syndication or JV or anything? Put a 1 for yes in the chat or a 2 for no. We're going to be admitting some people here as we go, but rock and roll. So let's introduce the guests of honor today, who are partners, by the way, in case you guys don't know about Dusten and Omar. Why don't you guys spend a minute each introducing yourselves and your background and development?
All right. My name is Dusten Hendrickson. I am with the group Mailbox Money, and we just create passive investments for myself and others. I started in 2004. First time I started building, and it was actually a duplex for myself that I lived in on one side and rented the other side out. And slowly that snowballed into what you see behind us. And this is 128 units. I'm at the Blue today doing some walkthroughs. And so over 18, almost 20 years now, I've started, really small, and now I'm here at the top, you'd say.
Rock and roll. Very cool. How about you, Omar?
Look, so Dustin and I are longtime partners. We've acquired a lot of assets acquisitions-wise in the Southeast, Atlanta, Florida, and we're doing a lot of developments now in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and other markets because there's just a lot of demand for this. And for me, my background's in finance, capital markets, investment banking, all of that. I was running and structuring deals, and now we're doing this for ourselves and making our partners, ourselves, a lot of money in the process. Because look, acquisitions are very lucrative, but developments are also very lucrative, but they're different beasts. So you have to know what you're getting into, and you have to be in with the right partners. Like, for instance, I found with Dusten, right? Because if you're not with the right partners, there's a lot of things that can go awry, and you need specialists. You can't kind of wing it, basically, with development.
Andy, can you break down a little bit about your development background too?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in this game probably about 20 years. Kind of started off on the brokerage side, but then probably right around when Dusten came in, maybe a little bit earlier, kind of developing some stuff in West Side area of Venice Beach. Kind of started off as low man, and then started to get a little bit more heavily involved. And then, we were starting to kind of buy things mostly in the Central California, some in Southern California. I'm located here in San Diego, right now in LA. I apologize for the screen. I'm kind of up in LA. Yeah, I think Omar hit it on the head. It is about the people that you're working with, right? And we kind of have this theme that basically we've talked about a lot in the past, which is, it's possible that you're going to get burned by a partner, but that doesn't mean partnerships are bad, right? And I think that people really need to understand the way to kind of get through the phases of development, and we could kind of break them up into 3. We could break them into 6. You could really break them up into 80 if you wanted to take all the intricacies of development from kind of pre-construction through construction, but you got to have the right people involved. So we can kind of get a little bit deeper into the nuts and bolts. I certainly have some questions for these guys because they've been doing it for a while. I mean, I'm in San Diego, but there's not a prettier picture than, is that South Dakota? Where is that, Dusten? Is that
Yeah.
in Sioux Falls? Yeah.
Yeah, we're in Sioux Falls.
Good living right there.
Yeah, the lake's right behind us.
That's
and we're
beautiful.
Developing an apartment right on the other side. That's the Blue. And we've been getting phenomenal feedback because of this lake.
Cool.
Yeah,
So location, you can't say it enough, even though it seems cliche. It's absolutely the first thing.
Awesome. All right. So just out of curiosity for the audience, please put in the chat, where are you from? Like, where are you calling in from? What city? I just want to see how diverse across the nation we are of the audience that's tuning in here. Put in like, I'm from Phoenix. I've never developed anything before working with Andy McMullen and our partners at Hammerhead Capital. We're in the built to rent space in Louisiana and Alabama. I kind of want to start with this question though, is like, because I've noticed one thing, man, developing in Phoenix is very different than investing or developing in Louisiana or in Alabama. So it's gonna be very interesting to compare notes here. you guys are developing in South Dakota and in Idaho, or maybe a couple other places. Where are you guys investing? Just out of curiosity.
Me personally,
Both of you guys, where are you guys developing? Better.
so Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We're looking at a couple of places in South Carolina, in and around Atlanta, and Tennessee as well.
And then you guys are developing ground up garden style buildings, A class. Is this correct so far?
Correct.
That's right.
Well, we do some mixed use too, and the blue is not a garden style. It's more of an A class. It's a mixed use style, but it's not really mixed use. It's just a more commercial grade. It's 5 stories on top of 2 podium concrete. So 5 stories of wood framing. So it's like 80 feet tall roughly. So it's not quite a garden style, but we do mixed use too. So mainly garden style, but there are some mixed use.
Okay, so there's a massive, I think everybody knows, right? There's a massive shortage of housing, both apartments and houses across the country, and billions of dollars that are being spent from institutions on development projects. Can you guys give your perspective on why, what have you seen in terms of how lucrative development is in comparison to other multifamily sub niches?
Well, look, it depends on the market. I'll take that, Dustin. It depends on the market, right? Now, if you've got a market where there's practically no supply, there's a lot of affluent customer base, they want to pay more money, like in Sioux Falls, yeah, it's very lucrative. But if you're in a market where there's a glut of oversupply, or it's oversupply in the wrong submarket. So let's say you're in a submarket where there's a lot of oversupply, but in other submarkets, there's not a lot of supply. So then it can be a very disastrous thing. But the other bigger deal also is people just look at the dollars. What they don't realize is that it's getting to this. Like there is practically hardly, I think like 99% of the development projects are never on time and never on budget. So the never on budget part, that's typically coming out of the developer's pocket. So yeah, it can be lucrative, but you can also lose your shirt. So you just have to be very careful going in that you have the right partners, right business plan, right market, and then the right set of expertise to execute on it.
Okay, so I heard this from Neil Bawa recently. He said you can't learn development in a weekend course. Like you wouldn't want to go to a doctor and get surgery if he just learned from YouTube and did a weekend course on surgery. Yeah. Tell us about your perspective on this, Andy. Like, how long does it take to understand development, especially if you're moving from, that sub niche into either build to rent or vertical development or some kind of multifamily development? How harder is it than multifamily value add, for example?
So that's kind of a relative question, because there's definitely some tricky things in multifamily value add, finding the right deal. I think a lot of the value, as you guys would probably agree, is created in kind of the pre-construction, right? Can you find the right asset with the right topography in the right kind of city with the support that you're going to get a project done, right? Because impact fees, taxes, all the kind of costs that are associated with it. I think I heard Omar on a pod saying something like, and I'm sure this isn't his, maybe we'll have to give him credit if it is, but you can't read about riding a bike, right?
Yeah.
You gotta be out kind of riding the bike to figure it out. So it takes years. And by the way, it's not something that you can do by yourself. So I don't want to be too reductive about the process, but it's not like I'm going to be able to do what our partner Chris Vaughn can do in kind of going to every single city council meeting, all of the neighborhood council meetings, making sure that all of the kind of important, or what they think they are important, people in the city agree that getting the project passed. So there's just a lot more intricacies. I wouldn't say that it's any more kind of surgery in that regard, but there is certainly a lot more kind of lobbying and political relationship building than there is in kind of a simple multifamily project.
Dusten, walk us through the development process in terms of phases. Like, what's the first thing you need to do? How many phases are there? Obviously, you can force appreciation at every step and sell or buy along every step in the process. But from your perspective, for example, in the deal that you're sitting in front of, like, how do you lock down the land, and then what are the next steps? Tell me about that.
Okay, so I don't know if it's because I've been in it for so long and I've done so many creative development. So I'm creative, and I push the creative envelope, and I've started doing studio units before they're really popular to do. So I've learned a lot of stuff in that regard, and I've stayed ahead of the trends. The first phase is you have to have some sort of vision, but before you really have a vision, you got to find the land. So you need a piece of land, but then you kind of have to have this vision. So it's like an art form, right? So Neil Bawa is right, because it's like an art form to develop. It's not like there's a full process. So you just kind of learn just from doing it, but you first find the land, and then what kind of vision do you have? Like, what can be put on this land? So you can envision something, and then maybe you go to the city and you're like, okay, what can actually be put here? And the city's like, well, we don't want what you have envisioned, and we want this to be there. Well, you've got to conform to their rules too. So, oh, well, maybe that doesn't work anymore. So now you've got to remold your vision to fit their form. And then that's what it is. It's like each step of the way. And the government, when you're dealing with the government, that's by far the hardest, most riskiest, because there's no really dealing with them. There's no way to deal with them. Like, you can't, it's not like a blue collar worker where you can hang out with them and you can get them to do things for you very easily. Whereas a government official, it's super, super hard. And you've got to complete all these steps. It's very slow. So you always have to kind of develop with what the city or the government wants, or else you have to influence what the city wants to what you're going to put in there. So there's a lot of politics and massaging egos and all this stuff. And the egos are the biggest at the government level, and they're the smallest at the actual work level. So in my opinion, it's easiest to get the work done. It's hardest to get the vision passed. And so the first steps are the hardest. It's the getting the vision that fits, and then you go through and underwrite it and doesn't work, and then you mold this shape. But there's probably like 5 main processes. And the first one is the land, the second one's the vision, the third one is the zoning, the fourth one is the permitting, and then the last one is the construction, which most everything happens in the last step that you see, but without all these other steps, you can't get to that last step. Well, then there's also the stabilization of the part of it, but that's just kind of the same as when you buy a multifamily. That part's really not that much different.
Okay, so phase 1 is vision and land. Now, tell me
land.
about, right?
Phase 1's land. Phase 2 is vision.
Oh, phase 2 is vision. All right, so
phase 3 is zoning. Phase 4 is permitting.
There you go.
Phase 5 is construction.
Excellent. So when you say construction, are you talking about infrastructure, or are you talking about actual vertical development?
Both. I mean, so if you wanted to break up the land, it's kind of this, you'd have to develop the land, then you'd have to develop the vertical construction. But once you get through all the zoning, the rest of the construction is easy. It's just getting people to accept your vision is the very, very difficult. That's the difficult part. And then going through the permitting and making sure that while you're going through permitting, you're not making the building so expensive it doesn't pencil anymore. That's another thing. So every step of the way, you got to make sure it pencils. You're constantly underwriting the whole time you're trying to figure out the deal.
See, this is why I thought it would be cool to talk to you guys, because the way that we're looking at it is 3 basic phases. The first one is locking up the land and then doing engineering. The second phase is the putting in of the infrastructure. And then for us, the third phase, at least what we call, and there's all these mini phases in between, is the actual vertical development. So this is going to be very interesting. So here's what I understand about you guys. Dusten, you were building in South Dakota, probably at the 20 to 30 unit scale. And then Omar, you were syndicating 100 unit plus deals, and you wanted to get into development. So you helped Dusten scale into larger deals. And then Dusten, you helped Omar get into development because he didn't know that process, is particularly not the artistic process. So I'm kind of curious about, as you guys partner, tell us a little bit about what are the ways to partner? Does it make more sense to do joint ventures or syndications? What's your perspective?
Well, that depends what you want to do and who your partner is, right? I mean, if you've got a good partner, the underlying structure of joint venture or syndication doesn't even matter. So in my opinion, the first step is to find the right partner. And Dusten and I worked on a few acquisitions, like $100 million plus in acquisitions before. So we had that trust and relationship built. And then doing a development wasn't necessarily that hard. Or by the way, for any other project wasn't that hard, at least from my perspective. So it's finding the right partner, and the underlying structure, I think, doesn't really matter.
Okay, cool. What about this? Like, how do you decide if you want to, because I know that you're very artistic and you love the design process and you're very creative in the structures and the things that you build out, Dusten. Tell us about, how much of an important part is the actual making it A-class or beautiful, or designing it architecturally speaking to be very ergonomically and aesthetically pleasing?
I just think it makes your job as a developer much easier when you do all those things right, because you can still put in a brand new building and you can just put up a standard blueprint and it will be full of renters, but they're going to be your standard workforce housing renter, possibly, where they're not really looking to spend. They're not really renters by choice. Okay. So now we're bringing in renters by choice, or renters that want the top of the line rental in that area. Maybe they're only going to be there for a year, so they don't want to buy. They still want to rent. But all the flow, the wellness design, the smart tech, the attention to detail, when you know that, or when they know that you paid attention to detail, they can feel it almost immediately. And that person, which usually has more money, usually takes better care of the place. There's a lot of specifics in that demographic that are good. They usually have pets, so we get pet rent, all that kind of stuff. They take very good care of the place. They want an Instagrammable place. And that's the easiest way to put it. Make your apartment Instagrammable and it's going to be 100% occupied.
Look,
and then you're able to push rents.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead. You were saying the right thing.
No, I was done.
No, look, it's a margin play. Okay. Look, you can spend a little bit more money up front, but you need to use your brain to actually spend that money, right, in the right spots, right? And you do that and you can drive your rents up 10, 20, 30, 40%, versus you try to nickel and dime and be cheap. And yeah, you can do it. No saying you can't. And sometimes you have to, but you're not going to get the same demographic. So we're playing the margin game here, right? Like, I spend X. The spending part is not a problem, but how much do I get after I spend this much money? And if I spend a lower amount of money, how much do I get? So what we've realized is if you have the right vision and you can cater to the right demographic, your margin doesn't increase one for one. It exponentially increases, right? And all you're trying to do is increase your margin in any business, whether it's real estate, you own any other business, all you're trying to do at every single time is to continue increasing the margin that goes to the bottom line. And that's what we're trying to do. That's why you need the vision. That's why you need the design element. That's why you need the eye. So you can take a weekend course. You can't kind of wing it, as I said. You either have to spend the hard yards to learn it, or you can learn it the hard way, basically, which is by losing a boatload of money.
Do you have any input or questions, Andy?
Yeah, I am curious, kind of, because I recognize that you guys have both worked in quite a few different asset classes. So just based on kind of current trends, what we're seeing in the economy, et cetera, what is it that you guys like about development? Do you still have that same view about, maybe, I think you've kind of worked in finance, Omar, so maybe there's some businesses that bring that same opportunity, but maybe start with Omar first, and then Dusten, I'd like to hear your take on kind of where we are today as we were 3 months ago, and what kind of pivots and maybe trend seeking that you guys need to undertake in order to kind of get to the next level.
Look, from our side, nothing's changed operationally. We're at the same spot or better. People still want to rent a place. There's hardly any housing available for, again, depending on which demographic they're in, right? Now, if you make over 100 grand or 200 grand, you require a different set of things versus somebody making 50 to 60 grand, right? So the fundamentals, lack of housing in the right submarkets, that's even worse than 3 months ago. Right? We're seeing better rent growth and rent projections in our portfolio right now. We're seeing having the ability a lot of times, even in our existing portfolio, when we tell people, hey, you want to move out and we're going to renovate this unit. A lot of people straight up tell us, hey, man, I'm just going to pay you the renovated unit rent. I don't want to move out, right? Which is, if you think about it, the best of both worlds for us, right? We get the higher rent, we didn't spend a dime on it. So for us, fundamentally, the thesis is the same. The factors that drive the thesis are the same, and our actions are still the same. Now, you might have some capital markets volatility here and there, but a lot of this, for instance, for most developers, or anybody, whether you're an acquirer or developer, doesn't matter, you built in a certain amount of that slack or cushion into your numbers anyways. So, which means basically on some projects, you might make a lot more money, on some you might make less money. But in terms of losing money, that's not really happening. But again, we can also say that because we have a really good team with a seasoned track record that has a good tenure. Now, if you just want to do developments by yourself, and you're starting off and you don't know about it, or you maybe fixed your house and you think you can do a 150 unit development, that's a whole different set of skills you need to get, or partners you need to come on board. So you can still lose money, but with our particular case, we're not losing money. We're making a lot of money because the underlying factors that drive returns, they are even better now than they were 3 months ago.
Can you direct your question to Dusten once again?
Yeah, Dustin. So actually, let's take a little bit different. So what would you say are maybe some of the trends that you're seeing over the last 3 months, and how is that informing how you would run your business moving forward? Are you still looking at multifamily projects? Are you still looking at smaller developments? Would you guys maybe, break this up in phases? Maybe you're just doing land development. So give us kind of an idea of how maybe your strategy, or maybe it's just the tactics, have changed in the last 3 to 6 months.
Okay. Well, I'd say I learned a lot of tactics going through some residential construction issues that I had. Like, I struggled in residential construction, building single family homes for a while. And I started realizing most of my money was made on the higher density stuff. And this, so I studied that a lot, and I've switched my whole, the whole strategy switch. We hardly have anything that's not cash flowing. So it's not like we have tons of developments that we're just starting. We started development within 9 months to 15 months. It's full, it's occupied, it's leased, it's on the next. We're starting developments behind it, but we don't have a ton of raw land sitting there. We don't have a ton of stuff that's eating cash. We have usually one project that's sitting, eating cash. Once we get that going, it's on the loan, it's financed, it's not eating our cash anymore. That thing's going to be occupied. Now we have one right behind it. So we were set up to not be like a speculation builder, and speculation people are going to get hurt at this time really bad, is what my opinion is, because I've gotten hurt during the same type of things that happen. But through it all, multifamily has never disappointed me, never let me down. It's always stayed cash flowing. So I've been able to make those assets work very well. And now when I see people dropping out of the game, that makes it even better for me. I want to go even harder now, because I know that most of the times when everyone drops out, that's when my best deals were had. In COVID, we didn't drop out. We just went even just as hard. As soon as the bank started loaning again, we were getting deals right away. So that was some of our best deals that we've ever gotten, because those deals we got paid back within like a year. Like our equity had been appreciated within 1 year. And we're seeing the same thing in development now. Like, I'm going on this job site over here, and I don't know how much more that the concrete would cost to pour now than last year, but I assume probably 30% with all the labor and the rebar uppages, and now concrete's going up. So I walk by this building and I'm like, wow, we've started this 2 years ago, and now it's this phase. If we waited till now to start, how much more expensive is this building? And then the fact that your buildings are so modern, so trendy, so up to the new style. And this style has radically changed. Like, before that, like, most stuff is the same. It's kind of wood and dark colors on your interiors. And now it's all white on white and light floors. So the way the trends have changed, it makes everything look super dated. And then when you put in the nice trendy stuff, now you're good for like 20 years before that stuff really gets dated. So this fact that you can build such nice product immediately, it's inflating right now, and no one else is putting anything out on the market to compete with, or not no one, but it's going down, right? People are getting scared. I like to run into the market at those times. So you got to figure a way to deal with the interest rate. As long as you can figure that out, keep going forward. But the initial fear scares everyone off, and I've learned that it's multifamily is fine. You can build it at any time, and you're going to be good.
I'm curious about financing and equity in the different phases. Do you guys just have one product that, funds the entire thing from the beginning until the end? Is that how you guys do it?
It depends. Like on the land, like on the developer side, yes. But the once or twice we bought the land, we had a land loan, which is going to be bought out by the development loan. But otherwise, it's just one loan, man. You just finish the entire thing. When you try to get too cute, you can get too cute. You can break it up into 5 little pieces and do this and that. But the problem is, do you want to get into the business of being a loan broker, or do you want to get into the business of being a developer? Right? So technically you can. We don't do it because our specialty is making a lot of money developing and acquiring, right? And we want our loan brokers to make money too, because man, everybody's got to make money, right? So you have to decide what lane you're swimming in. As an example, if I decide to swim in Dusten's lane and he does vice versa, our projects will never go anywhere, right? You understand? So
that'd be terrible.
Yeah. No, remember, everybody has to swim in their lane, because the other part, a lot of times don't realize is, look, this is a relationship game, right? So when you call on your vendors and you want your vendors and your partners to pick up your call and do the work for you when they're not doing work for anybody else, you got to make sure you're a good client. And how are you a good client is that you pay people on time and you don't swim in their lanes unnecessarily. You don't try to do everybody's job for them, right? People freaking hate that stuff. So pick the right partners. Like the few times I've gotten burned, it's not because of the multifamily or the project. We made a lot of money. It's because of my partners. Not because of my partners. I did the wrong thing. I picked partners where we were all swimming in the same lane, right? So it's too many cooks. It's not a partner issue. This is a me issue, right? I'm not blaming my partners here. So as long as we have partners and specialists, they have to be really good at their job, who swim in complementary lanes, they can support each other, and your vendors can support you. Just do that. Specialization pays in this business.
Okay, so on the raising capital side, how is that versus raising for any other project, whether it's multifamily or something else? What is your experience of raising capital for development? Is it the same or different than anything else?
For us, it was roughly the same, because our investors are giving us money because of us, our track record, and our relationship with them. And yeah, does development, like, will some guy not give us money because of development? Sure, maybe there's like a one-off case. But most of the people are giving us money because we have a track record and we made them a lot of money, right? So when you make people a lot of money, and more importantly, when you're clearly communicating, you say, hey, I'm going to get this work done for you, say, by the 15th of the month. And every 15th of the month, like clockwork, you're getting that work done. They have all the deliverables. They have no questions. Then people want to work with you, because think about it this way. How many reliable people that do what they say and say what they do we see in our lives? I mean, you can probably count them on your hands. So when you show up as somebody who's reliable, who's specialist, who's a professional, yeah, people line up to give you money. That's not a problem.
Dusten, I know that you don't like to talk about numbers when you're capital raising. You kind of like to tell the story. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, you're right. I don't talk about numbers at all, because I just don't feel like the numbers are ever accurate. They're all assumptions, and no one's good at making assumptions. Some people are better than others, but for the most part, your return that's stated is not going to be accurate. Any myriad of things can happen, and the scene changes and stuff's different. So, we take a base case scenario normally and say, hey, this is kind of the base case, and there's a whole bunch of other ways that we can make money, so look it up, all the possible upside, kind of let them speak for themselves. But I like to tell people, you got to go to see what we're going to do on this deal. This deal doesn't matter. You got to go look at our deal that we've done and look at the deal, look at how well that deal performs. So I really don't sell on numbers. Because I don't really even understand those really in-depth numbers. Just like Omar said, swimming in the lane. I don't get all that number. That's just like the matrix screen coming down to me. I can see a project. I can know how many doors it has. I know roughly how expensive it's going to be. I can just see if it's going to be profitable or not, just from my experience. And then I let Omar take over and do all the numbers. And so I do tell a story. In development, you need to tell the story to sell. That's the difference. You don't have anything in front of you. You have to create a really good story that people will buy into, that they want to be a part of. You have to ask them for help. And then you just have to point to all your past successes and, where your intentions lie. I need your help. You're going to help me, and I'm going to help. So it's all, like, you can help me, I can help you. We both need each other. It works perfect. Then I show almost all past history and how I've broken things down. And when I've run into a problem, this is how we've solved it. Basically, everything is solvable. There's no problem that we can run into that we haven't been able to handle. We've got an amazing team. If we can't solve it, it's not solvable. So, and this stuff, it always gets built. Your vision gets built. That's what I like to tell people. Once everyone is thinking about it and your thoughts are in the universe, that thing just comes out of the ground quicker and quicker. The more people that buy in, the faster the thing happens. So I love telling the story, getting the story out there. You build buzz, people know about it more. And then when you're going to open it up for occupancy, everyone knows about it. And now you're 100% pre-leased prior to occupancy permit. Those are kind of some of the stories that I like to tell. And those are kind of the results that we get. But I actually can sell development easier than acquisitions, because people know me. And I feel like capital raising comes down to, do people know you? They don't really understand the deal. They never will really understand the deal, because the numbers can change. Everything can change so quickly in these deals. They just need to trust you. And are you the person to get the job done? And once they do trust you and you've showed them results, they're going to give you the money. So for me, they like it when I'm more involved. So they think my investors think my developments are better deals than, say, an acquisition.
Okay, so I've heard you say that you do JVs, you do syndications, you invest in different markets, you do different building sizes, you different building structures, sometimes mixed use. And the reason why you like to do it is because real estate is a business where you have to evolve, pivot, adapt, and consistently change. And you like to be able to move with whatever the market is doing. Can you talk about that perspective for a second, Dustin?
Yeah. So the differences are, where's the piece of land? Is it going to take a mixed use building better? Is it going to take a mid-rise better? Or is it going to take a garden style better? And in my opinion, most of those renters are pretty much the same, except for the commercial aspect and the mixed use. But if you put a mixed use in a really poppin' area, that's all you got to do is fill the top. And even if you don't know anything about commercial, the bottom will get filled. You can get a commercial broker, they'll fill it. And normally the top, the residential will pay for the entire building. So it's not that big a deal doing a mixed use without having tenants in the bottom first. Some people want to have the commercial tenants, but that stuff takes a long time. It usually is easier to get a commercial tenant after the space is there. And I know that I can get residential tenants anytime, just from the way I build, and the way I build a buzz, or the way that we build this buzz around our product. We just make it seem like it's going to disappear really fast, because it usually does. And then, if you don't lease this pre-lease for construction, you're not going to even be able to get in. So yeah, I guess I just choose what the people want. So I try to stay in front of what people want. What do people want? Where are the trends going? What do we see in the markets? And that determines what we build. It's not what I want to build. And then I just put the design on it and try to make it cool. It's not necessarily what I want. It's what fits the area, the surroundings, everything that's already there. Can we tie into some of the buildings around it? It's more about that than my personal preference.
Andy and Omar, do you have anything you want to hit on before we go into lucrative trends?
Yeah, lucrative trends. And then I'd also like to hear, I've seen some of the developers in the audience, so I'd love to get their feedback. But I'm curious, because really a lot of what you're talking about, Dustin, and even Omar, is kind of the tip of the iceberg stuff. We talked a little bit about the details, and there's tons and tons of relationships and tons of nuances. I'm really curious more in kind of the process of kind of building out your guys' team. What is really important in the people that you choose to partner with? What are some of whether it's subs, whether it's expediters and getting things done with the city? How do you break it up? Omar, we'll start with you, and then Dustin, I'd like to hear your take on it too, because I know where you're coming from, you got to kind of envision the project, and you also have to sell the project, right? There's a lot of things in between those two things, right, that people don't see, and you need really strong people behind you. So talk a little bit about the kind of organization that you guys have created. So Omar first, and maybe that's the Dustin question. I'm just curious.
This is a good segue, because look, for instance, for me, I have to take care of the organization at the top. I had to figure out, for instance, who are my partners. Dustin's my partner. Another guy developer, Caleb, is my partner. Right? These are the people I have at the corporate level. We are equal partners. We're corporate level people, right? And all the other, at the high level, what kind of lending are we bringing in? What kind of equity are we bringing in? On the day-to-day level, I let Dustin and Caleb handle this, and Dustin can talk about basically how he's both, not just the subs and all of the stuff you asked, but how a lot of our subs and a lot of our vendors now are some of our bigger investors as well in our projects. So, Dustin, do you want to take that?
Yeah, we do have some really good investors that are subcontractors that are now starting to partner with us. They just see what we are doing, and they've been working since we've been working, and then they see that I'm not really doing the work anymore. Now I'm all of a sudden building this stuff, and they wonder, how is that? So I just tell them it's because I've owned a little piece of all these buildings that we've been building for however many years, and they kind of want a part of it. Picking the right subs, though, comes down to just years and years of relationships. And a super important part of picking your partner is to make sure that he's a really, really good guy and has good connections, because now he's going to have all the connections to all the same sub quality that you have. So I have really, really high quality connections. I know Omar also has really high quality connections. Caleb has really high quality connections, because the kind of people they are. It's like, do I want to hang out with them? And if I don't really want to hang out with them, I don't think I want to be a partner with them on a very high level at all. And I look for people that are good people, honest. I mean, those are obvious. You need those, obviously, but to have someone that's really good under stress, and even when things are going bad, they're still respectful to everybody, Those kind of traits are extremely important because you have to have everybody like you to develop, because people already hate you because you're a developer. Until you like show them all the stuff you do, they do not like you as a developer. You can develop over in this side of town, move to a different side of town. There's over here on this side of town, they're not going to like you immediately when you come in. So you have to do all the door knocking, all that stuff, and you have to handle rejection. You have to handle all this stuff and still be cool and calm. And people have to like you. So if people don't like you, I don't want to work with you for sure, because how are you going to get a job done if people don't want to work with you? They don't like you. So the likability is my number one thing, or number two behind honesty, but honesty and transparency comes 100%. If we can't, I mean, that's just a non-starter. So, but yeah, that's what I look for in partners, and they have to be completely opposite of me. So if you took me and Omar, you can't hardly get more opposite people.
Hey, by the way,
that's why it works so well together.
Mistakes I made when selecting partners? Yeah, those are the mistakes I made. Dustin is 100% right. The mistake I made with partners, and these are my mistakes, these are not my partner's mistakes, right? Was the fact that I picked people that were too much like me. So there were too many cooks in the same kitchen swimming in the same lane, right? What I should have done, because look, naturally we are biased towards people who think, act, and look like us. And you can't do that, because if you do that, then you have an echo chamber. So in this case, for instance, with Dustin and I and Caleb, the thing that I have learned a lot is the fact that we are complementary skill sets, and the likability and honesty part, obviously. But the complementary skill sets has really made it clear to me, and this is a learning process for me, by the way, because I'm not naturally like this, that I have to actively go and get complementary partners, not people who think like me, who act like me, and who will always echo the same opinion that I have.
I want to let you guys plug your 506c development for like a minute or two, and then we'll end off on lucrative future development trends and then open it up for questions. What do you guys want to say about your existing deal, guys?
Why don't you go ahead, Dustin, then I'll talk.
It's 144 units in a super high-end part of town, right next to some really good mid-level type shops, like really good for a high-end tenant shopping, right next to an office park, tons of medical jobs, right by the interstate. It's in the 57108, very affluent zip code, most affluent in the state, maybe fastest growing in the state too, I believe. So super good location, and it's completely built all around. And that's one thing I like. So you ask about the phase of developing the land. I try to buy land that's infill land, so everything around is developed, so we only have vertical construction. But that's what we got: infill land near medical complexes, high income, and then we got wellness design, super good amenities. Our comp next door is 20 years old. We're taking the same rents and we're using what they're getting. That thing's full all the time. People love it because they love the location. We're basically getting the same thing and just modern with nicer amenities. So we feel that we'll be beating our pro forma on this one as well.
Hey, and just on that, I know this is not my 506c offering, but we're hosting a conference in Vegas, October 12th to 14th. So Ruben, I can share an affiliate code with you that people can use to register for that conference. They'll get 20% off the ticket fees and all that stuff, because that conference, we have not just our investors, multifamily investors that are coming, but a lot of the key top multifamily developers, and by the way, value add sponsors. Both of these people show up. So when people show up, not only do they get up to the minute reviews and market information, they can connect with key decision makers, right? So because this, man, your network is your net worth, right? So when you meet the right people, especially in a place like Vegas, you can make a lot of action happen. So I'll share that with you.
Okay, cool. I mean, how do people find it right now?
So right now you can go to this website, realestateaction.info. So let me put this in the chat box, realestateaction.info. You can register and just let us know. I mean, it's October 12th to 14th, right? Obviously, I will share this with Ruben. And Ruben, then if you don't mind, if you can share it with everyone.
It's all good, brother. All right, so what's the future of you guys' business? What do you guys want to do over the next 10 years, you guys think? Have you thought that far ahead?
I don't know, Dustin. I just want to be really rich and make a lot of money for people. But Dustin, what have you thought? Maybe Dustin has some.
Okay, I got five-year goal is I want to develop in Phoenix and in Naples, Florida, because I want to live at both places. My goal, 5-year goal, is to develop where I live, and I want to have multiple little locations where I can go to Naples for a couple of weeks, Arizona for a couple of weeks. But I don't know. I got to find another location. So,
what about you, Andy or Omar? What do you guys want to accomplish?
I would say for me, what we're really kind of focused on, Ruben, as you know, and the audience probably does, is building out these built to rent communities. I think that we're able to bless a lot of people. I think there's a huge need in the Southeast where we're building in Alabama and Louisiana. So if I was to kind of look back 5 years from now, I really want to be proud of the number of projects that we've developed and the number of residents that we've helped bless. So that would be number one. Obviously, investors come first and delivering that white glove service along the way. But I really feel like all of that kind of would coalesce if we're doing the right things with the built to rent community. So that's kind of what we're hoping to do. What about you, Omar?
Look, I mean, I'm just having a really good time. We do about 100 to a little about $150 million of volume a year. Just continuing to build on that. But the biggest thing that I really enjoy is the quality of the people I meet. I would have never met Dusten as an example if I wasn't in this business, right? So the quality of partners, quality of investors I meet, and I invest in a lot of my investors' deals as well, by the way, right? So a lot of times, it's like building your network out. You meet cool people doing cool things. And these are oftentimes things that you probably wouldn't have even thought about, right? Because, we were swimming in our lane and somebody's a really cool person doing their thing. So learning, keep building that network, keep talking to people, keep getting better ideas, keep learning from our investors, keep learning from our partners, because it's all about growth. You got to keep growing all the time. And that's what I really like.
By the way, I gotta ask, I need a little bit of the origin story of you two, because there's like a little Laurel and Hardy thing going on with you guys, where I'm not sure.
I don't know who you're calling fat, Andy. It's not me.
That would be me.
Fat,
that
skinny,
would be me.
Happy, sad. No, I'm curious though, because it sounds like, Omar, maybe in your past you've had some challenges with relationships, and you kind of figured out at some point, I need to find some people that are a little less like me. And I know that you come from a kind of background of, your family was involved in real estate, but I am kind of curious, what was the impetus for you? Let's let you answer, Dusten. What was the impetus for you in bringing on a partner like Omar?
Oh, I had no idea how to scale. I was only working with I'm not complicated at finance at all. I just have money because God blessed me with some talents, and I'm just able to see some things. When I look at what Omar can do with spreadsheets, I'm like, okay, I need someone like this on my team, or I will not be able to scale. And he was already doing the 100 unit plus, and I knew I wanted to get to 100 unit plus because I already was at 20 to 30, and that was so much better than just twoplex or a 10plex. Omar's the one that pushed me, because I was ready to give up on development because I thought you had to build it, do all this stuff. And I was so siloed in my approach that nobody could help me. And then so basically somehow I got blessed enough for Omar to convince me to continue developing. And then I was like, oh, that's cool. Then I can teach Omar how to develop. I'll get to help him. And then I won't have to do construction anymore. And actually I realized that I like development the best. It's what brings me joy.
Awesome. Ruben, I'm sure I know there's a couple of developers in the audience too. I'd love to get, some questions in. I don't know.
Yeah, we got about 10 minutes. I'd love to have it be open, come off mute, ask your questions, put them in the chat. We'd love to. We got access to Omar and Dusten and Andy. Feel free to either comment what you guys are trying to accomplish, or, ask questions about development for whatever you're curious about.
Todd, I'm going to call out Todd Smith. Are you there, Todd?
Yeah. Hey guys.
Yeah. So tell us some of what you kind of learned along the way. If there's any kind of insight that you can kind of give maybe the rest of our audience about just the development process, how you're kind of building out. You're up north, probably not too far from Dusten, actually.
Maybe same latitude. Yeah. So we're the same as Dusten, doing infill stuff on a smaller scale, what's often called incremental development. So trying to find a place to fit into an existing community. So it sounds like what Dusten and Omar are working on is kind of a larger version of that. But I would say the process is pretty much, our experience is pretty much the same as theirs. There's a lot of waiting at the beginning when you're getting entitlements done and establishing the vision. The vision is really a core component of this. What do you think can go in? And then having to work with the municipality. And in our case, oftentimes there's a few other local municipal organizations, whether it's a conservation authority or those sorts of things. There's always stick handling to do in these deals. If you like the big picture work, I would say like Dusten, that's the fun for me. What can go here? What would really benefit people who will live here eventually? How does this add to the community? Those are the kinds of things that turn me on. And I think, when I walk around towns and villages now, and I'm up visiting my my family's home in a really small town in Northern Ontario, looking at buildings that were built 100 years ago. Whoever built those buildings, long gone, but they're still standing. It's pretty inspiring to know that you can have that kind of an impact on a community and that kind of longevity. And so if you build well and you've got a vision for blessing people and benefiting communities, I think that's kind of the mindset, at least that I take to these things.
Awesome, man. Thanks for sharing.
Benjamin Holgren. All right. Brand new to the game. Just went under contract on a piece. Where did that comment go? Just went under contract on a piece of land to build my first fourplex here in Southwest Washington. One piece of advice for a guy like me. Who's got some advice for me?
Ben, you're doing a good job, dude. Benjamin's my boy. I know who he is. He probably wrote it on his list of things that he wanted to get done, I bet.
All right, guys. I think it could be a little bit complex to even know what to ask when it comes to development. Andy, why don't you see if you can derive some questions or some comments from the audience?
Yeah. So I'm big on process, and I'm hoping that people were able to kind of understand today is that we kind of talked in broad strokes. I think we did get a little bit into the kind of process of it. I think that, those people that are interested in kind of the phases of development, I think what Dusten and Todd are talking about is kind of the vision of the project, and so much of what's done by the time a lot of these developments get to, Ruben and myself is the work that's already been done by our partners at Hammerhead with Chris Bond and Derek Alexandrenko. And what they've done is kind of a lot of the kind of what we call pre-construction, right? So by the time that we even get to deciding whether we want to pull the trigger on buying the land, we've already gone through the complete entitlement process. And that's not everybody does it that way. In some markets, it's a little bit more competitive. So you might be going through the entitlement process after you've taken down the land. You certainly go through some kind of, you've got your preliminary reports and you've got a good idea whether it's going to make sense or not. But in our case, what we want to try and do is get it fully entitled before we actually purchase the land. And then at that point, we can pay the extra couple $100,000 to get the engineering and the environmental finished. And that's typically when we take over, right? So we would kind of be in that mid construction process where Omar is probably doing a lot of the number crunching. He's trying to figure out who's going to be the best financing partner. What are the private equity groups that like development? Who are some of the larger lenders? In our case, it's Arbor or Corvest that will invest with us because they believe in the track record and the capital liquidity that we have. But there's a lot of developers that we didn't even really get in today. Omar kind of alluded to it, which is basically separating that process, right? And that after the land entitlement is done, getting the engineering and environmental, the next phase is kind of building out the infrastructure. And so that's what kind of Dusten had as like the first step of the construction phase. But some people and investors, I'm going to take a page from Dusten's notebook on, hey, look, let's tell the story and forget about the rest. Let's just trust in what we've done. But there are a lot of investors that are a little bit reluctant to invest in a project that does not yet have what we call the horizontal or infrastructure in place, street, water, sewers, utilities, all of those things in place, groundwater, before we can even finish the project. That's about a 6-month process before we can even go to the vertical. So I think that if people are more interested in kind of like the nuances, all that stuff that Dusten is talking about, he's got this beautiful background behind him that doesn't even tell a little snippet of the story of all of the things that he went through in order to getting a development project done. So I'm sure that there's a lot of people on the call and kind of understand that. But if there's people that are kind of curious about how we kind of bring collectively the teams together to be able to manage the asset. And then the next step is you're not done until it's stabilized, right? Yeah. You've got the construction done.
Andy, you're never done. You're never done till you sell. Right. Not just stabilized.
You're never complete, and you're always kind of iterating, right? We talk about that. You talk about that in businesses all the time. It's just, how quickly can we iterate, and your markets change from the 2 years when you put your first sticks up to the residents that you've got now and the community that's around you. So all of those things got to be consistently, and you got to do that in multifamily to a certain degree. Dusten likes talking about the sexy part, which is creating the vision and helping these communities, but all the work that's in between is really where a lot of that dough is made. So anyways.
All right. So we got a
So-
question about loans, recourse, non-recourse, LTV, interest rates.
It's recourse. LTV is anywhere between 70 to 80. Rates right now are anywhere between 4.9 to 5.5%.
Okay, so Thomas says it sounds like if I can get a contract on a parcel, the rest will fall into place somewhat naturally.
Yeah, if you got a lot of money, yeah, it'll fall into
Absolutely.
place very naturally.
If you know what you're doing and you think about that thought, if you let God bless you, it'll fall into place.
But
That's
you
awesome.
got to take some other steps along the way also, Thomas.
Last question. Can you
But
talk?
yes, tell Thomas to is the first step. Get that piece under contract. As soon as it's under contract and you got a couple nickels down, the difference in your mind shift on
Yeah.
willing to work on if you want to work on it or if you think it's a waste of time is going to change like that.
He's 100% right, Thomas.
What
When you put your skin in the game, yeah, stuff starts working out, or you find out whether you're really interested or not.
One thing I've heard from Dusten a few times is like when he was getting started, the first thing that he did when he didn't know something was ask for help, from his GCs and from everywhere else. So make sure once you get going, if you don't know the answer to something, go and ask somebody, how do I do this or that? All right. Last question. Can you talk more about your team structure outside of the partnership? I'm not sure what that means.
What does that mean?
Well, that means like we bring it. So Lloyd Property Management is not part of our partnership, but they're one of our partners, right? We use some certain banks. I mean, I guess anyone outside of our partnership, we want to treat them like partners. They're obviously not on the paperwork, but I always want to act as if it's just like as an investor. I never know if that investor is going to have two nickels or if they just look like they have money. And if they do have money, are they going to invest or are they not going to invest? You never know. So I treat everyone kind of the same until I know them. If I know them and I know they're a waste of time, then it's a little different. But I treat everyone until I really know them, and if how we want to use them on our team, I treat them with lots and lots of respect, as if they could do the job. Then I learn, okay, they can't do the job, then I move on.
All right, people are logging off now. At the end of the hour, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. How does the audience get a hold of you real quick before we shut it down?
Okay, I can just begin. You can join my mailing list by visiting my website at boardwalkwealth.com, BOARD walkwealth.com. The form is right on the homepage. So if you join now, I'll also give you access to my hidden mobile app, which has over 9 hours of free passive investing courses. Again, that's at boardwalkwealth.com.
Dusten?
Dusten with an E, DUSTEN at mailboxmoneyre.com. And yeah, you can contact me anytime. If you don't ever want to invest with me and you just have questions about development, I don't care. I love helping people. So just hit me up if you got any questions.
Cool. And for the rest of the audience is still tuning in, we're going to be doing another Build Your Legacy with Coach Trevor McGregor and Tyler Chesser talking about the syndicator subconscious and unlocking it. That's 2 weeks from today. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then after that, we're going to go into Build to Rent with some amazing guys. So keep in tune for the next ones. We're going to be at some point, I think in November, Richard Wilson, the man himself. It's going to be insane. We're just going to talk about capital raising for 45 minutes straight. That should be insane, talking about how to raise from family offices. So with that, we're going to sign off. Andy, any last words?
No, I really appreciate you guys making the time.
Yeah, you guys rock.
Talk. Thank you. That was awesome.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much. Thanks for putting on this show. I've lit a lot of your capital raiser shows. I like them.
Cool, brother. Thank you.
And Ruben, I will be emailing you shortly about this conference, buddy. Let's make it happen.
Woo! All right, Dusten, hit me up when you start developing in Phoenix, please.
Oh, hey, guess what? Your book you gave me, The Science of Getting Rich.
Yeah.
It's on my toilet. And if you want to be a developer, if you don't understand how that book works, you're never going to be a developer.
Cool. Love it. Yeah, I send a copy of that to most of my guests. Omar declined to receive a copy.
I never said that. I never said that.
You didn't put in your address.
Oh, shit. Send it to me. I'll send it to you. I'll send you my address right now. I'm going to email you with my address right now.
All right, cool, brother.
Okay.
All right, enjoy your day, guys.
Bye for now,
God
guys.
bless.